So we're learning more details about the plan of the New Orleans attacker who killed 14 people by plowing into a busy Bourbon Street on New Year's Day. In a joint statement by the FBI and the ATF, authorities say Shamsud-Din Jabbar planned to use a transmitter to detonate two explosive devices that he had placed nearby. The transmitter and two guns were recovered from Jabbar's truck. Meanwhile, NBC News has learned that a search of his Houston home turned up remnants of bomb-making materials that authorities say include a very rare explosive compound not seen before in a U.S. terror attack. Officials are still trying to find out what led Jabbar, a Texas-born U.S. citizen and Army veteran, to carry out this ISIS-inspired terror attack. For more, joining me now, Cynthia Miller-Idriss, director of the Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab and the author of Hate in the Homeland, the New Global Far Right. Cynthia, thanks for joining us and lending your insight. I have to ask you about this. We noticed that there was that Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas, this attack in New Orleans, both United States veterans. You know, former service members, sometimes they are radicalized, it seems, more easily. Is there some type of connection to their service in the military and this idea that they could be radicalized?
There is, unfortunately. I mean, first, you have to say the vast majority of veterans, the vast majority of active duty military service members do not get radicalized, are not going to go down those pathways. But there is a vulnerability at the time of exit from the military that can make people more susceptible when they've lost something that gave them such meaning, such a sense of heroic duty, of purpose in their life, when they become more vulnerable at that moment to propaganda that comes from groups that offer that to them, whether that's the Oath Keepers or that's ISIS.
In a post on MSNBC.com, you called this New Orleans attack an urgent national warning. In fact, the FBI itself had issued a warning to law enforcement on December 6th to prepare for low-tech vehicle ramming attacks at outdoor crowds during the holiday season. Was there a failure by law enforcement here?
Well, I think we put a lot in the hands of law enforcement if our expectation is that they're going to be perfect every time in a moment when all you need is a heavy vehicle and a crowd of people in an outdoor market or a holiday celebration. I think what I argued in that piece and what I have continued to argue is that we put too much emphasis on the law enforcement side of things, on the securitization of our lives, of trying to keep ourselves safe by building better barricades, instead of investing in the kind of more human components of prevention that would be figuring out why people are searching for something, what they need in terms of a sense of community, of belonging, of purpose, and how we can make them more media and digitally literate so that they recognize and reject propaganda when they encounter it.
Cynthia, I read something that was written by John Horgan at the Violent Extremism Research Group. He wrote, "People pick and choose their own ideology to suit their own grievances, but it's not the radicalization, but the mobilization to violence," which I thought was fascinating, right? So this idea you could be radicalized by a movement, by a meaning, but it's not so much the radicalization as it is the mobilization to the violence.
Yeah, well, John's right. We have, there's two different components here. One is the radicalization to the ideas, and the other is the mobilization to violence based on those ideas. The U.S. historically has been concerned primarily with the second bit, which is it's okay for a person to become radicalized. The idea is that's their free speech, that's their right. And what we want to do is make sure that a radicalized person doesn't pick up a weapon and doesn't harm anyone. I think that's a mistake to leave ourselves in the hands of expecting law enforcement to be perfect every time. It's impossible. It's an impossible ask. And so we have to start thinking a little bit more about how we invest in that first part of it. What would it look like to help equip people with more information about how to recognize and reject those ideas?
Cynthia Miller-Idriss, I want to thank you for joining us. I wish I had some more time. I want you to come back. I want to urge everybody who's watching right now and listening, please read the piece that you wrote, that Cynthia wrote, because you talk about primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, which you just mentioned right now, and this idea that maybe we need to start at the beginning to stop this from even happening so that we can save more lives. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.